forget to record, happens.
Oh, that's happened. Yeah, we've done that before too on our show when we've gotten rolling and jokes just moving through it and we're
Yeah.
just hilarious. And I go, oh, I haven't hit record yet.
Yeah.
I just sit there.
That's
And, like,
happened.
there's times where I'm really sad about it. Where I'm like, oh no, can we go back? Like, do you guys want to pretend like we didn't
Oh
just say
yeah.
all that funny stuff? Yeah, a gummy and NyQuil. I never would have thought.
That sounds horrible, dude. That
Oh my god.
I will tell you though, it stopped the coughing.
well,
yeah.
because you were
Oh, yeah.
fucking blacking out.
It also stopped the breathing
Yeah.
and the heartbeat for a little while.
I'm broken.
No, I love having these like smartwatches on my wrist all the time because it's hilarious. I keep telling myself I need to get in some kind of shape. Some kind of shape that like my watch doesn't alert me when I just like it's either my watch it'll suddenly go booping like, are you going for a run? And I'm like, no, I just stood up too quick. Or I'll be like in the grocery store and they're like, hey, getting your steps in, like your heart rate's elevated. I was like, no, I just saw a big old box of Cheez-Its and a sub, a public sub. And so no watch. I'm not getting in shape right now. I'm struggling. So
And the watch is calling you out.
yeah, and the watch is like, oh, good job, buddy. I'm like, no, it's not a good job at all. I'm doing terrible. Yeah.
Oh my god.
You know Bizzle's using this as an intro. That's the
yeah.
right?
This is gonna be the best intro.
Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. Today, G-Rex and I are joined by Matt from Nostalgia Land. Welcome to the show, Matt. I hear you have quite the fun and interesting story. I'll pass it over to you, Matt. However you want to start sharing with whatever you're comfortable sharing. Go for it.
I'll keep and I'll keep it very light. And just to start off, I loved my upbringing. I love my family. I love where I grew up. But there's definitely a really strange and interesting transition for me into becoming like an individual for myself and what I feel and how I believe and who I want to be too, because I grew up, I was adopted, and there's some success in this story too with that too. But so I was adopted, and my adoption was really weird. It was difficult. So my parents adopted me, and when I was adopted, they had me for like 2 weeks, I think it was like, or close to a month, and their lawyer called them back and was like, hey, don't get attached to that baby too much. He might have to go back. and they're like, what are you talking about? Might have to go back. Like, this isn't like a Blockbuster video. Like,
right.
Like, be kind, rewind the baby and send it back to wherever it came from. What do you mean? And they're like, oh, well, we didn't know, like, his dad, his birth father is part of a Native American tribe. And when a baby's part of a tribe, there's some really interesting, weird politics that go on, that basically the tribe gets first dibs. So if you got enough blood quantum that you would be able to join a tribe, they'd be like, oh, like all our babies, we get kind of first dibs.
Wow.
We kind of have say, and they try to keep everyone like in the tribe. So it was really, it's funny to think of it now, because like I never knew this side about my dad. Like, he's a very calm, like pretty, like very compassionate, very like even keeled kind of dude. And I heard stories from like my family, like, oh no, your dad was like ready to like hop in a car and drive to Canada, like right like that afternoon. Like, he heard about that, and he was like making plans. He's like, we can get on a plane, we can go to New York, we can like, then drive up from New York to like through Buffalo and go straight across the border there, and like we can do this whole thing, and like we'll just we'll make it happen until this all blows over and stuff. And I was just like, and it's really sweet, and it's like, oh, that's great. But luckily, he hung out, but there were some weird rules that like I couldn't stay with them. So luckily, we had family here in town, and so they're like, okay, but can we, we don't want to like put him in a foster home. while this whole thing goes over, where can he stay? And it was like a weird technicality. It's like, it just can't be under your roof.
Interesting.
And so my parents like took me over to my aunt's house, which is over out on Key Biscayne, way back. This is 89. So completely different city from then till now. But yeah, so it just was this crazy, hectic, like nonsense little blip at the beginning of life there, and then it just went away. It just disappeared. And they just said, you know what? They said, you know, it's fine. Keep him, have him, and so I grew up, and I grew up here in South Florida, in South Miami, and in the Gables. Feel very lucky, very privileged to have done that. And my dad and my mom were in ministry. They're pastors down here at a local church, and it was such a wonderful upbringing, just filled with a lot of love, a lot of compassion. And it really wasn't until I think I was in middle school, high school, when I started thinking like, okay, I'm going to be, I want to start figuring out who I am in all of this. And it was kind of wild how often like I loved art, fell in love with art and photography, and I started doing that. And pretty quickly, like when I started getting into like high school, like really early high school, people were like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, well, I don't know. I might be a photographer. I might, do something with art and drawing, or, all that. And how many people like, and it wasn't out of mean, but they were like, oh, you're not going to like go into the ministry or do that. And I was just like, oh, well, that's because it's my grandpa's calling, and it's my dad's calling, and lots of members of our family's calling and stuff like that. And it's not that I don't have a heart for it. I do love people in ministry, but and I still love on them, but it's just like, I don't know if that's for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what I want to do. So I was trying to discover like, well, what I want. And the only thing that really hurt in that time was how often like when I told people like what I did for school, I'd be like, they're like, oh, so where do you go to school? What did you play, football, baseball? I'm like, no. No, I go to a really artsy fartsy school in downtown called New World. And they're like, oh, cool. So like, do they have a sports team? I'm like, no. No, we have step aerobics on one of our floors. And yeah, so I went to a very I guess what they would call like liberal arts, but honestly, it very liberal high school in downtown Miami here called New World. But I wouldn't say like liberal at all. I would just say like it's just the fact that it's all these wonderful young creative people just exploring every like avenue of where their talent and creativity can take them. And it's interesting to me how sometimes when I would tell people that around my church community, like just raised eyebrows, like, oh really? Because and it's certainly it is like, whoa, that is kind of like, that's a big step, because in between the summer of 8th grade and 9th grade, before you go to that school, you do what's called an art intensive, and you go for the summer, and you learn figure drawing, and you do nude figure drawing with live models, like in all shapes and sizes, everybody. And there's some stories from those. Jeez.
Wait, how old were you during this time?
I was 13, 14. Is that right? Yeah.
Can you imagine me that age seeing nude 13 models?
Yeah, it's drawing new models. And so yeah, that's not like a light thing, right? But even in that time I was like, but dude, like it's art. Like it's transcending this idea of nudity and vulgarness and like shame and stuff like that. And so I always kind of had like this outsider kind of mentality, but I was heavily involved with my group at church and everything. And I still am with a lot of those loving people, today, but it did feel kind of, I felt odd and out of place a lot of the times. And then especially when I would go visit my family out in the Midwest, who I love dearly, but we just often would hit road, like little snags and stuff where I know mentally I was like, I shouldn't go down that road, because I don't want to push that or ruin that, like, or have this opinion that is very clearly not in line with, kind of those core, more traditional conservative values and stuff. And so I just always felt a little bit of an outsider, but still felt accepted, because I it's you see my parents, you see me. And it was always funny, because people would be like, oh yeah, I totally see the resemblance, and then I'm like, but I'm adopted. and Like I don't look like my dad at all. But people are like, oh yeah, you totally look like your dad. I was like, all right, look closer. Um, but and then out west is apparently like, and it's funny because like I feel like I look very racially ambiguous, and so most places I go, I feel like most people assume like I'm a really big Mexican or
Yeah.
or Hispanic dude. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to do to convince people I'm mostly Native American. Is I walk out with like a drum or just emerge from a teepee all the time, like just to give like those visuals to people, like, oh, there's
Yeah.
one, like that's him. Like he's not like something else. So when I would go out and visit, like it was always like I was always surrounded by like a very different culture, a very different like culture. And I was always accepted. Like my grandfather was always just like, that's my grandson, that, and I never felt unloved, uncared for, or unaccepted. It's just naturally I noticed I don't look like these people, and naturally, and I don't know, but I had kind of like a weird cultural like not culture, sorry, dysphoria in a way with like, okay, when I see my family and I see all the people I'm surrounded with, they look like this. I should look like this. And then I would stare at myself in the mirror and be like, oh no, I don't look anything like that. And I had this weird disconnect between those things, which was it's honestly it's not anyone's fault. It's just it just happens. And I just kind of realized like, oh, that's like a part of my identity is to accept my native heritage and to be proud of that. And then to also like, be okay, be at peace, because it struggled for a while there, to be at peace of like, I don't have to be, just because I'm a pastor's kid, which the term is PK kid, I don't have to be a pastor when I grow up, and I don't have to like follow in the steps. I'm allowed to. God wants me to, like my family wants me to. They want me to be able to explore and and use my talents or gifts or interests how I want to, and I don't have to subscribe just because it's some kind of familial tradition. So yeah, I mean that's I don't know if a message to young people or whoever's out there, just follow your dreams.
Yeah, really follow your dreams,
Yeah.
because like what well, like with Dirty Skittles and I, like this podcast was never in our wheelhouse. Then some really shitty shit happened with me.
Yeah.
And it transformed our like morning conversations transformed into this. And we followed our dream. We followed the laughter and the wanting to learn.
Yeah.
The more I learn about people, the better I feel about myself and about society.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I mean, and look what it's doing on a enormous scale, that you're to tabletop conversations, now that you're recording them and pushing them out there, like how much good they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's because you followed your passion, just for each other, for your friendship, for each other's lives. Now that passion is growing and just, I mean, I feel saving is a great word. Rescuing other people's
This
lives.
is where we just crawl into our shells.
Yeah.
Good job. Pat on the back.
Well, let me go into my turtle shell. But like Skittles, you had a question.
Yeah. So something you said I'm very interested to see if you've explored more into it or about it. When you would be sitting there with your family who is all accepting and loving of you, and you would still feel like, oh, I should look like them, or I should fit in to whatever that mold was. Where do you think that came from? Like, what do you think drove that?
I think there's like a natural thing, and I witnessed it with my kids. And honestly, a lot of these things I just came to peace about in the last 6 to 7 years of being a parent, because I have an 8-year-old in there, and a 5-year-old, and it's really just been the last couple of years of coming to a peace about it, because I noticed how they're always naturally seeing the differences in everything. And it's just kind of a way, I think it's a way that we use to protect ourselves, to understand our environment. And I did have a moment, like I think in middle school, where I was like really kind of like upset about how I don't have this immediate familial heritage with my parents. Like I don't see my face. I don't see my dad's nose or on my nose. I don't see like my mom's like hands in my hands and or feet. And I'm always looking up and down myself and being like, whose toes are these? Like I know they're connected to generations and generations of people, but where do they come from? And that was like I think that was the only moment, I think, when I was in middle school, late middle school, I think would be like around 8th grade, where I kind of had these questions because I don't know why, but there was like 2 classes in my middle school that did like, where are we from kind of projects. And I did the same project for both. I literally just like duplicated everything because I don't think the teachers communicated, because one was for an English class and the other was for a history class, and they just never passed each other in the hallway. So I just literally made 2 of everything. And we're talking like back in the day when we had to use like World Book on a PC. I don't know if you kids remember, it came on CD-ROMs.
Yeah.
We had to load them up, and whatever I found on there, I was just like, okay, yeah, that's where I'm from, and that's me, that's my stuff. And I mean, so much of it was bullshit. I'm just gonna tell you,
You're in a safe place.
it really was. Yeah, I'm sorry, Miss Greenberg, and Miss I think Miss Wallace. It was. Sorry if you're ever listening to this again. I turned in the same project twice, and I got a B on both, which was more insulting. I think didn't even get. So this was supposed to be about you and your life, and it just like it's like a give me grade, and I think they both gave you a B because they just did it so shitty. It's horrible.
That is fucked up. That has layers of fucked upness.
Yeah. I have a lot of guilt and a lot of shame because my ADD wants me to do everything all at once, but never do it 100% well. And that's that's my growth, is to try to do it to the best of my ability, not to what's going to get me the passing grade. So.
I love that.
But yeah.
So that was in middle school. There's 2 things. One random. As you're talking about this, I started to think about, I was watching or listening to a podcast recently that was talking about children whose parents have had like crazy amounts of plastic surgery where they no longer look like who they once were, and how the children are growing up with those genetics and looking to their parents and not seeing that reflected back. So like when you were saying that, I just thought of that and like, oh, I want to dive on my personal time. I want to research that a little bit more. But growing up from there, so that's in middle school, did that linger? Like, did that thought of like, where did I come from?
Yes. Yeah, it really did. And I always had known what tribe I was part of and the area I was from, which is not far from here. But in late high school, I was the first time I attempted to open up my adoption file, which for some reason, and it's like, it's like the stupidity of like the bureaucracy around these things. They locked my file, and I don't know exactly what that means. I always imagine like it was like a manila folder and they somehow put a keypad on it. That's my imagery. I'm a very visual person. And so I was like, well, just get the thing and unlock it. And can we just move on?
You're like, give it to me. I'll pick the lock. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Just send it to me. Send me the map quest. I'll drive up there and I'll find it. But then on top of that, the adoption agency I was from burned down.
Holy shit.
All the things. Yeah, all the things. And I was like, I think someone's trying to tell me I shouldn't be exploring this, but the adoption agency burned down, including all of their records. And so I can't remember exactly who found it or how they found it, but we have a really good lawyer friend, incredible lawyer. I won't mention him, but I mean, he's a gift to our family and to everyone he's involved with, because he somehow found his way through into the court documents, like the duplicate recordings of like those proceedings, and found it. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. I worked with the judge. I can unlock your file, but I can only get you one name. You have to pick.
Oh,
It has to be either your dad's name or it has to be your mother's name. And because of the timing of everything, and going back now, I think I would have done it differently. But because of the timing of everything, and I was applying for colleges soon, and if I was a member of a tribe, they get some really good scholarships, and I could go to any school I wanted. I was like, okay, let's do my dad's. Let's do my dad's name. So I got his name, and it's crazy how quickly it moved. But I got his name, and I could go find out where I had his two previous addresses. I drove up, tried to find him, went around. No luck. No one was like either I pulled up and the house wasn't there, like there was just an empty lot,
wow.
or I pulled up and like very clearly another family of a different ethnicity came out, and I was like, I don't think I can walk up and be like, "Hey, I'm your son" to these people. I would not be appropriate and would scare the children, I think. But then there was one random internet search, and he's like, "Okay, here's another address we didn't saw before." So I drove up, and I went to the house, and actually, the first thing I did was I just like confirmed, okay, like yeah, I think this is right. I think this is it. So I wrote a letter, and I sent the letter, and I just tried to do it as calmly, as peacefully as I could. Like I was at peace about it. I'm still at peace about it, but it was still difficult in the moment because I was, you even still, as much as you can say, I'm not expecting anything, like you still have some expectations about how,
Yeah.
or hopes of how it's going to go down. So I sent that letter, never got a response. I even included like a little picture of myself. I told him like, I don't want anything. I'm not asking you to like adopt me or like let me become your heir or take anything away from other kids
Right.
like you might have had. Like, I don't want to disrupt your life. I just want verification and that I can be a part of the tribe, my birthright, and that I can, that I can go to college. I want to go to college and not have to worry about the finances, which is ridiculous that we have to worry so much about finances to go to college in this country, but that's a different topic. You can take a deep breath for that. Sorry. And so I waited around, never heard back from him. And so finally my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was like, why don't we just drive up there? So we did. Drove up, knocked on the door, and my grandmother, who didn't know it at the time, and she was very like kind of like, she's home alone with my, I think it was my half brother and my half sister at the time, or my cousins, and she was home alone. And so I was understanding, like, because she was like very like, oh, no, let's stay out here on the porch. Like, who are you, this kid? And then she's like, no, oh, I remember this. Okay, yes, I remember you. And it was this weird interaction. And I was just like, it's just like 15 years ago, dude. Like it wasn't that long. Um, she said, okay, well, I'll call him. I'll tell him to come wait around and like that you're here. And so we stayed in the area, and she just never called back. She never talked to me. She never like gave me another. And so I just, put that baby to bed, and I just said, you know what? Like, it just seems like he doesn't want to at this time. And so I just, said it's going to be okay. I'm going to figure out this whole college thing myself. So, and I did. It got through it. Did my best with what I could, and got some scholarships even still. But it was like 10 years later or something. No, not 10 years. Sorry. It would have been about 6 or 7 years later. I got a text from my sister, my birth sister, who's like, hey, I found this letter in like my dad's drawer. I'm just like, why were you rooting around your dad's drawer, first of all? And she was like, is this you? She like found me on Facebook and stuff like that. And so yeah, we then we had she texted me and messaged me, and I got connected with her, and then I got connected with my uncle and my aunt, and my uncle, actually, he wanted to adopt me. He was the reason that I was almost taken away from my current parents, because he put in the thing, he wanted to adopt me and keep me on with within the family and on the res and everything. And he was very sweet. He's such a just such a big hearted person. And but it worked out better because when I've talked to him now, we have a relationship. We talk every now and often. But when he finally told me a story, he was like, it's best that you went where you did, because I don't think, even if as much as I wanted to keep you in the family and around, I don't think I would have been able to take care of you at the time. Because he was saying that he had a lot of turmoil and kind of chaos going on in his life, and so he's like, it's probably he admitted, he's like, it's best that you went where you went, and that now we get to have this relationship. And then a couple of years later, I was in Atlanta working at the Weather Channel. I got a call from one of the folks at the tribal office, and she's like, I have a email here from your mom. And I was like, why would my mom be sending you an email? And like, I was really confused. I thought she meant my adopted mother. And I was like, why is she talking to you? What do you guys play Yahtzee or like backgammon on the weekends? Like, what's on? I don't. And she's like, no, your birth mother. And I was like, who? And she's like, oh yeah, so apparently like my birth mother had sent an email. Her friend was like, what if you sent an email? Try, someone's got to know something. And she sent an email a couple of years ago, and it just kind of bounced around from office to office, and no one was really sure what to do about it. And then it finally hit this one woman's desk who I've worked with over the years, and she's like, oh, I know that person. And so within a couple hours, I had my mother's email and her phone number and her address, and so I just sent her a message. And I mean, it was weird and wild at first, but it was strange to finally see, oh, that's my nose, oh, those are my feet, like, oh, we have the same weird knees. And it was really weird and beautiful. And I have 3 other siblings who I love. Now I have 6 actually in total, because my adopted sister. 6 siblings in total. So Christmases are a nightmare, and so are birthdays, which I'm really bad at those. But yeah, there's some success in all this, and there's been some really great some peace around it too. But yeah, that first those first couple of years there, where it was just like this abandonment of not even wanting to engage with me at all, was difficult. And it was weird, like that was unexpected. That was really unexpected, because I at least thought we could chat, we could be cordial, we could talk, we could, but then no, it's just nothing, just a wall.
So you mentioned that your birth sister found the letter. Was that the letter you wrote to your dad?
That was the one I had written, and he had kept it.
So he kept it.
Yeah.
He put it in a drawer.
He had seen it.
Interesting.
Kept it and put it away. I think hid it in his drawer. And I don't blame him. This dude, he's been through a lot. And it's the more that I learned, I have met him, which was really fun. Because I went and I met my uncle. We were hanging out, we're talking. He's like, come meet your dad. I was like, okay. He's like, just come on. And so we went, and he's like, we drove over to the house. It's the same house I visited like 7 or 8 years before. And or 10 years before. I was 16. I think I was like 26 or 25. Yeah, something like that. And so we drove over, and he was working in his backyard, just on something like a shed. And my uncle walks in and goes, hey, like, waves him over, and he comes over. He's like, hey, good to see you. He's like, who's this? I was like, this is your son. You should have seen this dude's eyes. Just, oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, this is it. And it was so casual. Like, it was so like, yeah, this is him. There he goes. He's right here. And I was just like, hey, it's great to meet you, man. Like, this is I don't know what to say. He was just like, yeah, cool. It's good to meet you too. Yeah, glad you're here.
Deer in the headlights.
Like, yeah, deer in the head. Yeah, totally. Not just a deer in the headlight. Hit him with a fucking semi. Honestly, so.
Yeah.
But he did all right.
He ripped off the Band-Aid real quick.
Yeah, real fast, which was unexpected. But yeah.
There's one other thing that you said that I'm like wondering. You had mentioned like when you drove to the house, you knew that was the right place. What about it?
It was a feeling. It was weirdly a feeling. I really think that, and I believe that we all have 6 senses, or 7 and 8th senses. I don't think anyone should ever doubt their intuition, or when they think something's wrong and they can't put their finger on it, that they should be dismissed. I think those thoughts and feelings should always be explored. It felt, and I try not to use the word often, but it felt supernatural. When I drove up to the house, something said, just, this is it. This is where he
Wow.
lives. And luckily I was correct, because that would have been a really awkward letter to send to some random neighborhood person. I'm your son. And then, like, what if his wife found that? And then he's like, well, we've been together
Yeah.
for 27. You have a kid out there? Who are you talking about? So, yeah. But, yeah.
Is he remarried or
Yeah.
married to someone
Oh,
else?
yeah. So
Did she know that he had a son?
yeah. And that was difficult too, because she definitely put a strain, to put it nicely, she put a strain on that relationship and did not really want him to reconnect with me. She has now since moved on, his wife. But it's really, what's sad about it is I feel a lot of compassion for him and a lot of sympathy, because I know he has not had an easy life since I was born. In that
Wow.
the best years of his life were right before I was born, and a lot of them have just been incredibly difficult, and incredibly difficult also for my other two siblings. And so I always keep them in mind, and try to reach out to them and connect with them. And they're both very sweet, luckily, and very decent, very good people. So that's, they came out, I think, very well what was a very toxic living environment from their childhood. So they're both doing their best. But yeah, that was it was such a roller coaster. And then when I thought it was dead and buried and I had come to peace with it, all of a sudden that my sister a couple years later just sent me a text, and I was like, oh, we're reopening this whole thing again. All right, let's go for it. And I think there's lessons to be learned where a lot of people, they always preach about, pursuing joy, pursuing happiness. And I think that can't be dismissed without also knowing pain and sadness.
Yeah.
That your limits of how much joy you can experience, I think, are often matched by how much pain and suffering and strife and stuff that you've gone through. Because I think we all agree, like, life's hard. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times, especially now, the modern idea about it is just do what makes you happy. Just keep doing what makes you happy. And then guess what? They get, further down the line and they realize they're not happy. And it's like, well, then do the thing that's difficult. Do what's hard. Do what's going to push you, what's going to strive you. Because if if there's a problem, really, I think the point of it is to help you grow, and as a soul, not as a person. Like, you are not when I believe when you die, you are not a human, like a body having a soul experience. You are now a soul having a human experience on this planet. And I think the purpose of it is to make you grow. And the only way you grow is through resistance and pain and strife. It's just like working out. Like, you got to lift the heavy. And actually, what's crazy is, like, when you work out, you're actually tearing muscle fibers. And because muscles don't like to be worked out, so you tear muscle fibers to then be able to pick up more. And I think, we have kind of a backwards mentality now, where we tell people, no, just do the things that bring you joy. When I think we're really meant to explore, okay, well, why is this difficult? What's this problem? And how do I grow from this? How do I make myself stronger from this? And a lot of times it's really, it's hard to say, but it's not meant to be easy. And I have to remember that a lot myself, because I have, I've been through a lot of tough times, not just with that situation, but I've been through hardships too. And often I'm like, why me? Like, why this? And then thinking, like, well, years back and looking, I was like, well, now I'm stronger for that. I'm better for that. I have more peace about it. And I don't have to be afraid of the next trial as much as I was then, because hopefully I've learned and grown enough that I'll be able to handle it like a very calm, reasonable adult. So that's always that's always my fears. Like, am I handling this like a calm, reasonable adult, or am I just like a big ADHD kid who's just like sad and angry that I didn't get to like play N64 enough? Like, what?
I I have to say though, I really commend you, Matt, for doing that. I mean, as hard as it was, you went out and tried to, seek your truth, right? And
Yeah.
it's got to be healing to some point that you found what you were looking for. It may not have been exactly what you were looking for, but you had that inner strength to just keep plugging along and try and find it. And I think that's really an important message just to our listeners. Is like, don't give up. Like, it
Yeah.
may not happen right away, and like, don't be surprised if it does happen. But
Yeah.
like, I commend you for just keeping at it because you didn't give up.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I and I don't want to. Yeah, I'll step off the soapbox, the milk box or milk crate in a moment. But I do something else, something. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Thank you, ADHD. It just hit me.
Squirrel.
Squirrel. What was that? Okay.
It was about being on a milk crate.
Yeah. Oh, it was with it completely
Frank,
left me. Just like a
Sam.
bird in the night, just gone.
Like a bird in the night.
Maybe that's
I don't know why that tickles me so much, but it does.
Maybe that's why, like, and honestly, I feel like community is a big thing, and I think like I'm a positivity of and I think I have, like, everyone's like, oh, ADHD is such a problem. It's like, no, it's not a problem. It's just you got to know how to use it, and you got to know how to, like, leverage it for your abilities. And I will say, and maybe this is another milk crate. I'll step onto that one for a minute. I think we gave morning people way too much power in this world. Just way too much for them to say, well, I'm up at 6 a.m. We should all be at work by 9. And it's like, well, dude, you can't make it past 6 o'clock at night and you're going to bed at 8 when I can keep going until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Why do you get to make these rules? And I think we come to find that most people are like that, or they're like, anything past 9, I'm like, I have a really hard time committing to anything
Yeah.
before 9. I'm sorry, anything before 9 a.m. I'm like, you might see me there. I don't know. We'll have to find out. God, no, it totally left me. I wanted to I'm sorry.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Or will it? Okay.
No.
So I'm curious if, and I don't know if this is the right way to ask this question because I've never had the opportunity to talk about it, but is your family, like your father and your mom and your siblings, are they still part of the tribe?
Yeah. I still have members that are part of the tribe up there, and on the res in Fort Lauderdale. And for the people who know, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's great. I go up, I get to be a part of functions now. I get to know more about my culture. My kids get to know more my culture. It's really kind of interesting because, like, my daughter looks just like me, and she has long, beautiful hair. My older one, and my younger one got my mom's genes. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, and it's completely wild. We didn't know. We were like, and it's not to say anything, not a dig against my wife, but in order for them to be a part of their tribe, they're actually part of the Cherokee tribe. We had to do a blood quantum and a DNA sample, and so we know for a fact they're both mine. Because when that baby came out, if I wasn't in the same room as my wife, like, I would have been like, "Whose kid is this? Hold on." I was like, you gave birth to an Olsen twin. This is the whitest kid I've ever seen.
So did you know your birth mom had blonde hair and blue eyes before you saw her, or was that a shock to you as
Actually, no, we did. We had a random detail, and it's hilarious now. So my adoptive mother, so when when I was born, my birth mom, she saw me for, like, I think 30 seconds, and she had a really good friend who took a picture of me before I left. And that's all she had was this little picture. And then while I was still at the hospital, my adoptive mother came in and was like, "Oh, I'm here to pick up my son and, see him and all this stuff." I had to stay in there. I had a double hernia when I was born, so I had to have surgery, like, at 4 days old. And the nurses were like, "You can't be here. What are you doing?" And she's like, "What are you what do you mean I can't be here? I'm his mom. They're like, no, you're not. You gave him up. He's not your son anymore, because they thought she was my birth mother. And it's hilarious now, because even though I grew up separate from them, we have all agreed I would have probably came out the same person, because my adoptive mother and my birth mother are so similar in like their temperament, their little like quirks, their funny little things they do. And they're both blonde women with very light blue and green eyes. And I mean, it's so funny how similar they looked back in the 80s, early 90s. But we're separated by, I think, almost 20 years. And the nurses at this hospital were like thinking that my mom, my birth mother, was there to steal me away again. It changed their minds, and it's hilarious. I love getting them together because they're so fun. But I think it's been such a graceful and amazing period, because now like my adoptive parents love my birth mom and her husband, who's technically my stepdad, and he's such a loving dude too. And it really blessed that everybody is, fairly, I mean, we're all a little weird, but fairly decent, joyful human beings, adults, that are responsible and caring. And so that was a weird, we did know that there was a possibility that one of our kids might come out that way. Now, in most cases though, native genes are pretty strong. You usually can see them. And so when my younger one came out, we were like, oh, she's not going to keep this. And because most kids, they come out with very light eyes and lighter hair. And we said, she's not going to keep this. No, but the months kept going on. Those eyes are still blue, and then hair keeps getting blonder. So all right.
It's okay to be not okay. Just make sure you're talking to someone.